working from home. This has come obviously a much bigger deal ever since in the past several years with it's so much easier to connect on the computer. I worked from home for about 6 years myself in one of my jobs and or one of my claims positions. So I'm aware of it firsthand, and it's come obviously a huge deal with COVID-19. So we talk about it in a couple of cases. So the original case that really kind of drove this home and kind of laid out what the test is for when are you covered under workers' comp while you're working from home is Black River Dairy Products. And the employee here was a frozen pizza delivery person. And so what he did was he promoted, sold, and delivered frozen pizzas to specific locations, typically bars and restaurants and that sort of thing. His headquarters was 193 miles from where he lived. And so he was completely free to determine his own hours. And he was reimbursed for electrical and phone because he had to have extra freezers there to store product. And he had to plug in his truck to, like a block heater and a freezer that was in the truck, all that sort of thing, right? So on the morning in question, before leaving on his route, he unplugged the truck's freezer, had it all started, started up and running, and he prepared his daily paperwork where, his delivery route, he had all of his sales slips ready to go. He was working on that. And then as he's walking out in his driveway, he slips on black ice and falls down. Now, the employer disputed that and said, well, wait a minute, this has got nothing to do with us. He's at home. He hasn't really gone out yet. He hasn't done anything yet. He hasn't shown up at his first location. He was walking to his truck. So why should that be a workers' comp claim? Well, the court disagreed with this. And they said, under these particular circumstances, we believe that not only was he was not merely going to work, he was at work. He had done several things that morning already to show that he was working, right? And so they found that particular case compensable. And they throw out 3 indications that they said, look, when we go into these cases in the future, we're going to look at 3 different indications to determine whether a claim like this is compensable. 1, the quantity and the regularity of work performed at home, the continuing presence of work equipment at the house. So how often are you working at home? And how much equipment do you have? And the special circumstances of the particular employment that make it necessary and not merely personally convenient to work at home. So for instance, last night, when I was kind of reviewing this presentation, I had it at home. I don't normally work from home, and I went over my presentation at home. I was doing that as a personal convenience for me. I didn't want to sit in the office and do it when I could do that at home. So that was me being convenient for myself. Now, if I had tripped and fallen getting up out of the chair, almost certainly that would be denied as a workers' compensation claim. So that just kind of gives you the parameters for it. So it gets really difficult for people who work strictly at a computer. When are they falling in and out of the course and scope of employment? And I got a suspicion that you might see a lot more of those claims coming in the future as to help determine, I get up from my computer at my home and I'm going to the bathroom and I trip. I bet you a lot of those are going to be found to be compensable. And there's not a lot you as an employer can do because there's so many things why it's such a big deal right now. And to give you an example that's a little different from the Black River one is this Augustine versus Kenosha visiting nurse. So she's a visiting nurse. One day, she didn't normally work from home. She'd go about her route, show up at the employer, do her paperwork, turn it in so that they can bill the insurance carriers or Medicare or whomever. And on this particular day in question, she had a sick daughter. So she had to go home and stay with her sick daughter. And the employer said, you know what, that's fine. Just, we need to get that paperwork done. So why don't you take all the paperwork with you and get that filled out while you're at home staying with your sick daughter. So she did that. And in the process of carrying some of the paperwork into her house, she falls down and gets injured. And the court said, well, the employer said, go ahead and do that, take it home. And they said, that's a compensable workers' comp claim. So when it comes to the risk control issues here, again, it's going to become a bigger deal. There's only a certain amount of things that you can control on this. But there's clearly, I think in the long run, there's so many cost savings and better employee morale and retention that I think a lot of employers are sitting there going, there might be a risk, but it's relatively minor compared to our overall operations. But just realize that having people regularly work from home can potentially open you up to a compensable workers' comp claim. And again, investigations are always going to be key in this. If someone says I got hurt at home, I'd be asking them a lot of questions about the particular circumstances that involve the specific incident, and that's always, like I said, always comes in is a big deal and is key in these.